struggling widow helped a stranger in the tornado. Later realized the cowboy owned half the county. The sun had barely risen over the jagged peaks of the Arizona desert, yet its heat already pressed down like an invisible hand. The land was vast and unforgiving, a place where only the strong, clever, or desperate could survive. Dust swirled in the morning wind, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. In this harsh world, stories moved faster than the desert winds, and none traveled faster than the tales of a mysterious Apache warrior known as the Desert Ghost. People whispered about him in small towns and trading posts, their voices trembling as they spoke. Some called him a protector, others a harbinger of vengeance. Farmers who dared take water from the river without respect said he would appear like a shadow at dusk, a silent figure that disappeared before one could speak a word. Miners who trespassed into sacred lands told of their belongings being burned or scattered, with no one ever caught. And yet, no one knew his real name. He was a ghost, a phantom who moved through the desert with the grace of the wind and the swiftness of a hawk. Not far from where the Desert Ghost name spread like wildfire, another story unfolded, one far less whispered and far more dangerous. A notorious gunslinger, feared in towns and feared even more on the open trails, lay gravely wounded in the Devil's Cauldron, a canyon so treacherous that even experienced riders avoided it. His body bore the marks of a skirmish with lawmen, his pride and ego shattered as much as his shoulder. The canyon walls seemed to lean in, holding him prisoner, while the desert sun baked the rocks around him. Every breath he took was a struggle, each moment more painful than the last. Survival seemed like a distant dream. In a quiet Apache village, not far from the canyon, Angel stirred from her sleep. She was young, barely 20, yet she carried herself with a grace and strength that made her seem older. Her skin was sun-kissed, her eyes sharp and alert, and her mind was as quick as the desert fox. The villagers often spoke in hushed tones about her abilities. She could track animals that seemed invisible, move silently over sand and rock, and read the sky as easily as others read books. But Angel's greatest gift was her heart, brave, curious, and sometimes stubborn. That morning, a messenger arrived, his horse tired and covered in dust. He carried news that would reach only a few ears. A gunslinger had been spotted in the Devil's Cauldron, badly wounded and near death. Some villagers whispered that it was none of their business, that they should leave strangers to their fate. Others thought it foolish even to speak of it, for the gunslinger's kind had caused pain and fear to many. But when Angel heard the news, her heart did not listen to fear or caution. She could not ignore a life in danger. The decision did not come easily. Apache law and tradition had strict rules about contact with outsiders, especially men who had shown violence against others. Breaking those rules could mean exile or worse. Angel knew this well, but she also knew something else. Sometimes doing the right thing meant stepping into danger. And she was not a woman who could turn away when someone needed her help. Angel prepared for the journey in silence, her movements careful and precise. She chose a small leather bag, filled it with dried meat, water, a few herbs for medicine, and her most trusted knife. Every item had a purpose. Nothing was wasted. She tied her hair back, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and mounted her horse, a sleek dark mare named Luna, who had never failed her in the wilds. The villagers watched from the edges of the settlement, whispers following her like a breeze, but no one stopped her. Angel's mind was focused entirely on the canyon and the wounded man who awaited her there. The journey was harder than she had imagined. The desert was alive with challenges. Sharp rocks tore at Luna's hooves, thorny bushes snagged at Angel's clothing, and the sun beat down relentlessly, making every step feel heavier than the last. She traveled in silence, speaking only to Luna, her voice low and steady. "We'll reach him, Luna. Hold on a little longer." Her words were not just for the horse. They were a promise to herself as well. By midday, the canyon walls loomed closer. The Devil's Cauldron was aptly named. Its cliffs were jagged, shadows deep and dark, and the air grew hotter and heavier as she descended. Angel could feel the weight of danger pressing in, but she pushed forward. Her instincts guided her as she followed tracks in the dust, remnants of movement from hours, perhaps days before. Small signs of life, a broken branch, a hoofprint, a piece of cloth caught on a thorn, all led her deeper into the maze of rock and sand. Finally she found him. The gunslinger lay slumped against a boulder, his face pale, lips cracked, and breathing shallow. His once proud coat was torn and dusty, and his hand shook as he tried to steady a small water flask. When Angel approached, he stirred slightly, eyes opening to meet hers. Fear, pain, and suspicion were all visible in his gaze. He tried to push himself up, but the effort caused him to groan. Who are you?" he rasped, voice weak and broken. Angel knelt beside him, offering water and a gentle hand. "My name is Angel," she said softly. "I'm here to help. You're hurt badly. You can't stay here." The gunslinger's eyes narrowed, distrust flashing like a spark. "I don't need help from anyone," he muttered. "Especially not from you." He hesitated, as if the words themselves could wound him more than his injuries. Angel didn't answer with words. Instead, she simply offered him a steady hand and the reassurance of her calm presence. She had learned long ago that actions often spoke louder than any promises or warnings. As the afternoon wore on, Angel worked to stabilize him. She used herbs to stop the bleeding, carefully wrapped his wounds, and ensured he had enough water to last until they could move. The desert was merciless, and every minute that passed increased the danger. Shadows grew longer, the temperature dropping only slightly as the sun sank behind the cliffs. The gunslinger, though still wary, began to understand that Angel's presence was not a threat. By the time the sun touched the horizon, the first stars appeared overhead. Angel knew they could not stay in the canyon overnight. Predators, thieves, and the harsh cold would make survival nearly impossible. "We have to move," she said firmly. "I know a place not far from here. It's safe. You'll survive if we get there." The gunslinger did not respond at first, exhausted and in pain, but eventually he allowed her to help him to his feet. Every step was a struggle, but Angel's strength and determination kept them moving. She guided him along narrow ledges, through rocky passes, and over dry washes, always alert for danger. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying sand and dust that stung their skin and eyes. Yet Angel pressed on, her focus unwavering. As night fell completely, they reached a small alcove hidden among the rocks. It was a natural shelter, protected from the wind and out of sight from anyone passing above. Angel helped the gunslinger lie down, using her scarf as a makeshift pillow. She tended to him once more, ensuring that his wounds were secure and that he could rest.
"Thank you," he whispered finally, his voice barely audible. I
didn't think anyone would come." Angel only smiled faintly, the shadows of the canyon playing across her face.
"You're alive," she replied simply. "That's what matters."
"We'll keep moving until you're safe." As she kept watch through the night, Angel thought about what lay ahead. The journey was far from over. The desert was unforgiving, and danger lurked around every corner. But she felt no fear, only purpose. She had chosen this path, knowing it would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. And for the first time in many years, she felt the quiet certainty that doing what was right often required courage beyond measure. The stars shone above the canyon like tiny beacons of hope. Angel whispered a silent promise to herself and to the gunslinger. They would survive this night. They would face the challenges ahead together. And in the heart of the desert, a young Apache woman named Angel had begun a journey that would test the limits of bravery, trust, and compassion. A journey that would echo through the annals of legend, long after the Devil's Cauldron had swallowed countless others. The morning sun rose slowly over the Devil's Cauldron, sending long streaks of golden light across the jagged canyon walls. The desert, which seemed quiet and still, held a tension that only those who truly understood it could feel. Angel woke before dawn, her eyes scanning the rocky horizon. The gunslinger stirred beside her, groaning softly as he tried to adjust himself. His wounds had made him weaker, and every movement caused him pain. Angel could see the frustration in his eyes. He was proud, used to surviving on his own, and yet here he was, dependent on someone else. Angel did not speak harshly or scold him. She understood pride, having seen her own people carry it as a shield and a weapon in the harsh world of the desert. Instead, she offered a small smile and helped him sit upright. "We must move before the sun grows too hot," she said softly. "I know a path that will keep us safe, and it is not far from here." The gunslinger tried to argue, but Angel's steady gaze silenced him. She was young, but her strength and determination were undeniable. He finally nodded, knowing resistance was useless. Slowly, painfully, he rose to his feet, with Angel's support. Each step was a struggle. The desert was merciless. Every rock seemed sharper, every slope steeper, and the air was dry and burning in their lungs. As they moved, Angel kept a careful eye on the signs around them. The desert spoke to those who knew how to listen. A broken branch could mean a predator had passed this way, a disturbed rock could signal a hidden snake, and a faint footprint could reveal a bounty hunter in pursuit. Angel noticed small changes immediately. The scent of wet sand from a recent rainfall, a distant echo that could have been a coyote, and the faintest shadows moving across the cliffs. She remained alert, guiding the gunslinger carefully through the safest paths. The journey was slower than she had hoped. The gunslinger's injuries made it nearly impossible for him to keep pace. Angel often had to lift him over rocks or support him as he limped through washes filled with sharp stones. Despite his stubbornness, she saw glimpses of his true nature. He was not cruel, as many tales had claimed. He was wary, cautious, and exhausted. Each step revealed a human being rather than a legend or a villain. Angel's heart softened slightly, but she did not let her guard down. Survival required constant attention. By midday, the heat had become intense. The desert sun bore down like a hammer, making their skins sting and their clothes stick uncomfortably to their bodies. Angel gave the gunslinger water from her canteen, careful to ration it. "Drink slowly," she advised. "We must make it last." He obeyed, his throat dry and parched, feeling the cool water slide down his burning throat. As they climbed a narrow ridge, Angel paused to rest. She scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing as she spotted a faint glimmer of movement far below. "Bounty hunters," she whispered, her voice tight. The gunslinger stiffened, fear and annoyance flashing across his face. "How far behind us?" he asked. "Far enough for now," Angel replied. "But we cannot stay on this path. They will find us if we do not move carefully. Follow my lead, and do exactly as I say." The gunslinger nodded silently, his pride swallowed by necessity. Angel guided him down a hidden trail she had learned from her people. It was narrow, twisting between rocks, almost invisible from above. They descended slowly, carefully, the weight of every step magnified by the gunslinger's injuries. The canyon seemed alive, whispering threats and promises through the wind. Angel's senses were heightened. Every sound, every movement could mean life or death. Hours passed like this. The gunslinger, exhausted but obedient, leaned heavily on Angel whenever he could. She encouraged him gently, never showing frustration, knowing that patience was their only hope. During rare moments of silence, the gunslinger studied Angel. She moved with confidence and calm, her eyes alert, yet kind. He realized that she was unlike anyone he had ever met. She was brave, yes, but also compassionate. Her courage was quiet, steady, and unshakable. The desert began to change as they moved further into the canyon. The rocky walls gave way to sandy washes dotted with hardy shrubs and cacti. Angel spotted tracks in the sand, small animal prints, but also the faint marks of human boots. She knelt to examine them closely. "They are still following us," she said softly. "Not close, but we must be careful. They will try to cut us off at the next bend." The gunslinger's hands trembled slightly, whether from fear, exhaustion, or pain, Angel could not tell. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly. "You could leave me here. No one would know." Angel considered the question for a moment. "Because it is right," she said simply. "No one deserves to die when they do not have to. That is enough reason for me." The gunslinger was silent. He had grown up in a world of gunfights, lawlessness, and betrayal. Words like justice or right rarely mattered. But something in Angel's tone, in the certainty of her actions, made him pause. For the first time in many days, he wondered if there were people in this world who acted without selfishness or fear. As they continued, the terrain became more dangerous. Loose rocks threatened to slip underfoot, and sudden drops appeared without warning. Angel had to hold the gunslinger tightly at times, guiding him over ledges that seemed impossible to cross. The desert demanded vigilance, and she gave it without hesitation. By late afternoon, they reached a small, dry riverbed. It offered temporary relief from the rocky trail, but Angel knew it was not without risks. Predators often hunted along the water's edge, and the open area left them vulnerable to being spotted from above. She moved quickly, helping the gunslinger to a shaded spot under a cluster of rocks. They rested briefly, breathing heavily, muscles straining from the constant effort. During this rest, the gunslinger began to talk more. He shared stories of his travels, of battles and narrow escapes, of moments when luck had saved him and others when it had not. Angel listened quietly, asking questions only when necessary. She understood that part of helping him meant allowing him to share his story, to feel human again in a world that had forced him to survive by fear and cunning. The sun began to set, painting the canyon walls in brilliant shades of red and gold. Angel knew they had to find shelter soon. Night in the desert could be as dangerous as the day, bringing cold, predators, and the risk of getting lost in the dark. She scanned the horizon and spotted a cluster of rocks forming a natural cave. "We can rest there for the night," she said. "It will keep us safe." The gunslinger allowed her to lead him, his strength fading but his trust in her growing. They reached the cave just as the last light disappeared behind the cliffs. Inside, the air was cooler, offering relief from the scorching heat. Angel made a small fire using dry wood and stones she had gathered. She cooked a little of the dried meat she carried and gave it to the gunslinger, helping him eat despite his injuries. Night settled over the Devil's Cauldron. Stars dotted the sky, distant and bright, unchanging and eternal. Angel sat by the fire, keeping watch as the gunslinger slept, his breathing finally steady. The silence of the desert surrounded them, broken only by the occasional howl of a coyote or the rustle of wind through rocks. Angel reflected on the journey so far. The desert had tested them in every way: heat, terrain, and the threat of bounty hunters. And yet through all of it, she had remained calm and focused. She understood that the journey ahead would be even harder. The gunslinger's wounds would need more care. The canyon held more dangers, and those who pursued them would not give up easily. But she also knew something else. They were alive, and as long as they were alive, there was hope. The gunslinger stirred slightly, murmuring in his sleep. Angel placed a hand gently on his shoulder, ensuring he did not roll toward danger. "We'll make it," she whispered. "We just have to stay strong, stay quiet, and move carefully. Tomorrow is another day, and we will face it together." Outside the cave, the desert night stretched endlessly. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying stories of survival, courage, and hope. Angel closed her eyes for a moment, resting but alert, knowing that the path ahead would be long and difficult. And deep in her heart, she carried the quiet certainty that her determination, skill, and bravery would guide them safely through the Devil's Cauldron, no matter the challenges that awaited. The next morning, the canyon was shrouded in a soft, pale light. The rocks glowed with a reddish hue as the sun slowly climbed higher into the sky. Angel woke first, as always, her eyes scanning the horizon and the path ahead. The desert held no mercy, and she knew they could not waste a single moment. The gunslinger was already stirring, groaning as he tried to sit up. Angel was at his side in an instant, steadying him and offering water. "Drink carefully," she reminded him gently. "You need your strength." He nodded silently, his pride making it difficult to ask for more help than he had to. But Angel had learned to read people like an open book. She knew when to push and when to wait. "We must move quickly," she said softly. "There are people following us, and we need to stay ahead of them." The gunslinger's eyes widened slightly, fear flickering across his face. He had spent years avoiding men who wanted him dead, but this time he realized he was completely at the mercy of someone else. Angel's steady presence was both comforting and frightening. He trusted her because he had no choice, yet he did not fully understand the depth of her courage. As they left the cave, Angel led him along a narrow ridge that wound through the cliffs. Loose rocks crunched underfoot, and every step required careful balance. The desert was alive with sounds: the distant cry of a hawk, the rustling of small animals in the brush, and the faint echo of wind through the canyon walls. Angel listened carefully, stopping occasionally to signal the gunslinger to remain silent. Hours passed as they navigated the difficult terrain. The gunslinger's wounds slowed them down, and Angel had to carry him across certain stretches. Each time she lifted him, she could feel his tension, his fear of being weak, his resistance to depending on anyone. She never let her frustration show. Instead, she spoke softly, giving him encouragement. "We are almost there," she said. "You are stronger than you think, and we will make it together." By midday, they reached a small plateau overlooking a narrow valley. Angel paused, crouching behind a large boulder to catch her breath. "Dead." She scanned the area carefully. Far below, moving slowly through the sand, were 3 men. Bounty hunters, she realized, tracking the gunslinger. Their eyes were fixed on the plateau, and one of them raised a rifle, scanning the rocks for any sign of movement. Angel's heart beat faster, but she did not panic. She had prepared for this moment.
"We must move carefully," she whispered. "Do exactly as I say."
Do not make a sound, and follow my lead. The gunslinger swallowed hard, nodding in agreement. His usual confidence and arrogance were replaced by trust, even if he did not fully admit it. Angel led him along a hidden path that wound behind the cliffs, a narrow trail only she knew. The hunters were below them, searching, but Angel's knowledge of the desert kept them hidden. Every step was slow and deliberate, each movement calculated to avoid detection. The journey was grueling. The gunslinger's energy was nearly gone, and the sun's heat made it worse. Angel had to stop frequently, using shade where she could find it to let him rest. She offered him water and small pieces of dried meat, rationing everything carefully. She knew that if they were caught or slowed too much, their lives would be in danger. As they continued, the gunslinger began to speak more. His voice was quiet at first, hesitant, but eventually he shared parts of his story. He told Angel of the skirmish that had left him wounded, of the men who had betrayed him, and of the mistakes he had made in the past. Angel listened without judgment, asking questions only when necessary. She understood that part of helping him was allowing him to feel human again, to speak his fears and regrets aloud. By late afternoon, they reached a small stream hidden in a shallow valley. It was a rare blessing in the harsh desert. Angel led the gunslinger to the water, letting him drink and wash his face. She herself drank sparingly, careful to conserve the precious resource. The desert demanded respect, and she had learned that survival often depended on careful planning and patience. They did not linger long. Angel knew that the bounty hunters would not give up easily, and staying in one place for too long would make them vulnerable. She guided the gunslinger along a series of hidden trails, avoiding open areas and moving only through shaded spots. The terrain became increasingly difficult, with steep climbs and narrow ledges. Angel's knowledge of the land was their only advantage. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon, Angel spotted a small alcove among the rocks. It was protected from the wind and hidden from view, a perfect place to rest for the night. She led the gunslinger there carefully, helping him to lie down and checking his wounds again. His breathing was heavy but steady. He was exhausted, and Angel knew that he needed rest more than anything else. While the gunslinger slept, Angel kept watch. The desert night was quiet but full of danger. Coyotes prowled in the distance, and the wind carried faint sounds that could signal predators or men on the hunt. She stayed alert, listening to every movement, her senses sharp. The stars above shone brightly, and she found a small comfort in their constancy. No matter the dangers below, the stars were always there, steady and unchanging. During the night, Angel reflected on the journey so far. Every step had been a test of endurance, courage, and patience. The gunslinger's injuries had slowed them, and the bounty hunter's pursuit had added constant tension. Yet she had stayed calm and focused, guiding them through the desert with skill and determination. She understood that the challenges ahead would only grow more difficult. When dawn arrived, Angel woke early as usual. The gunslinger stirred, groaning as he tried to rise. She helped him to his feet, giving him water and a small piece of dried meat. "We must move quickly," she said. "There is a path ahead that will take us out of this valley, but it is difficult. You must trust me." The gunslinger hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. He had no choice. Angel led him along a narrow trail that wound through rocks and cliffs. Loose stones threatened to make them slip, and sudden drops appeared without warning. Angel's careful guidance and steady hands prevented accidents, but the journey was exhausting. By midday, they reached a small plateau overlooking another valley. Angel paused, crouching behind a boulder to scan the area. In the distance, she saw movement. More bounty hunters. They had not given up. Angel's heart quickened, but she did not panic. She whispered instructions to the gunslinger, leading him along a hidden path behind the cliffs. Their knowledge of the land kept them safe, and they moved slowly and carefully. As the afternoon wore on, the gunslinger began to speak more openly. He shared stories of his past, of mistakes and regrets, of moments when luck had saved him and moments when it had not. Angel listened quietly, understanding that part of helping him was allowing him to express himself. She never judged, never criticized, only guided and supported. By evening, they reached a small cave hidden among the rocks. It was a safe place to rest for the night, protected from wind and hidden from view. Angel helped the gunslinger inside, making a small fire from dry wood she had gathered. She cooked a small piece of dried meat and helped him eat, ensuring he had enough strength to continue the journey. The night settled over the canyon, quiet and still. Angel kept watch while the gunslinger slept, listening to every sound, every movement. The desert held many dangers, but she remained calm and focused. She knew that survival required patience, skill, and courage. And in her heart, she carried a quiet determination that they would make it through the Devil's Cauldron alive. The next morning, the desert was quiet, almost eerily so. The sun had barely risen, but its heat already pressed down on the rocks and sand. Angel woke first, as always, scanning the horizon with sharp eyes. The gunslinger stirred beside her, groaning softly, a reminder of just how fragile his condition still was. His wounds had slowed them, but he had survived thus far, and Angel knew that every step forward was a victory. They had reached a part of the canyon more dangerous than any they had faced before. Narrow ledges clung to the edges of cliffs, loose rocks threatened to slip underfoot, and the sun made the surfaces scorchingly hot. Angel carefully helped the gunslinger to his feet. "We have to move quickly," she said softly. "This section is dangerous, but we can make it if we focus." The gunslinger nodded silently. Pride and stubbornness had once defined him, but now weakness and exhaustion forced him to rely entirely. He trusted her, though he did not fully understand why. Angel's courage was quiet but undeniable, her focus unwavering. He felt a strange sense of comfort in her presence, even amid fear and uncertainty. As they navigated the cliffs, Angel noticed movement far below. The bounty hunters had tracked them again. 3 men, moving cautiously, scanning the rocks, searching for any sign of their prey. Angel froze, crouched low behind a large boulder. "They are close," she whispered. "Too close. We must hide and wait for the right moment to move." The gunslinger's eyes widened.
"We can't outrun them," he muttered.
"No," she said calmly, "but we can outsmart them. Follow my lead." She led him to a small crevice in the rock, barely wide enough for them to hide. The shadows concealed them, and Angel used the canyon's natural curves to block the hunter's view. They waited silently, listening to the faint crunch of boots on stone and the occasional bark of a distant coyote. Every sound made the gunslinger tense, his body coiled and ready to flee. Angel placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Doe, doe, doe, doe. Stay calm," she whispered. "They do not see us." Hours passed as they waited, the sun climbing higher, beating down relentlessly. The gunslinger's muscles ached, his wounds burned in the heat, and he struggled to remain quiet. Angel, however, remained alert, her senses focused on every movement, every sound. She had learned that patience was as important as speed in survival. Finally, the bounty hunters moved on, unaware of their hiding spot. Angel let out a small breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We can move now," she said softly, guiding the gunslinger along another hidden trail. The path was narrow, twisting between cliffs and loose rocks, but Angel's knowledge of the desert kept them safe. Each step was careful, deliberate, and slow, but progress was progress. As they descended into a narrow canyon passage, the wind began to pick up. Dust swirled around them, making every step more difficult. Angel wrapped her scarf around her face, shielding herself from the grit, and helped the gunslinger do the same. Visibility was low, but she knew the path well enough to navigate even in these conditions. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the canyon. A rock had tumbled down the cliffside, startling them both. The gunslinger stumbled, pain flashing across his face, but Angel caught him quickly, steadying him with a firm grip. "Be careful," she said. "This section is unstable. One wrong step could be deadly." Despite the danger, they pressed on. The canyon grew narrower, the walls rising high on either side, creating a natural corridor that seemed to trap them. Angel's heart raced, but she did not let fear control her. She had faced danger many times before and had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. As the afternoon wore on, the desert sky darkened with the approach of a storm. Clouds gathered quickly, unusual in this arid land, and the wind howled through the canyon, carrying with it a faint, eerie sound. Angel's eyes narrowed. "We need shelter," she said urgently. "The storm could make this canyon deadly. Lightning, falling rocks, flash floods. We must find cover." They reached a small cave just as the first drops of rain fell. Inside, the air was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the scorching heat outside. Angel helped the gunslinger lie down, checking his wounds once more. He was exhausted, shivering from the sudden change in temperature. She covered him with her scarf and a thin blanket she had carried, doing her best to keep him warm. The storm raged outside, thunder echoing through the canyon walls. Angel sat close to the entrance, keeping watch. Lightning flashed, illuminating the rocks in brief, blinding bursts. The sound of the rain hitting the canyon floor was deafening, and small stones rolled down the slopes, creating a constant threat. The gunslinger slept fitfully, groaning occasionally in pain, but Angel stayed vigilant, ready to act at a moment's notice. Hours passed. The storm did not let up, and the canyon transformed into a dangerous labyrinth. Floodwater began to trickle into the cave, forcing Angel to shift the gunslinger higher, ensuring he remained safe. Her muscles ached from the constant effort, but she did not complain. She had made a promise, and she intended to keep it. During a brief lull in the storm, Angel looked at the gunslinger. The pain in his face was etched deep, but there was also a faint expression of trust. He had come to rely on her, not just for survival, but for hope. Angel realized that this journey had changed them both. She had faced countless dangers before, but none had tested her as much as protecting another life under such extreme conditions. The storm continued through the night. Angel stayed awake, her mind alert, watching the canyon for any sudden changes. She knew the desert could turn deadly in moments, and she could not afford to let her guard down. Despite the fatigue, she felt a quiet determination. They would survive. They had to survive. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the canyon washed clean, glistening under the rising sun. Angel helped the gunslinger to his feet once more. He was weak, exhausted, and sore, but alive. "We must keep moving," she said. The canyon is still dangerous, and the bounty hunters may have returned. The gunslinger nodded, leaning heavily on her. Together they navigated the slippery rocks and unstable terrain, each step carefully measured. Angel's knowledge of the desert was their lifeline. She guided him through narrow ledges, past sudden drops, and over treacherous washes, always alert for the slightest danger. By mid-morning they reached a small hidden valley. Angel paused to catch her breath, scanning the area for any signs of danger. There were none, at least none she could see. She allowed the gunslinger to rest, giving him water and a small piece of dried meat. The desert was still unforgiving, but for the moment, they were safe. As they rested, the gunslinger finally spoke more openly. "I don't know how to thank you," he said quietly. "You've risked everything for me." Angel shook her head. "You do not need to thank me," she replied. "I am only doing what is right. We all have a choice in life. This is mine." He studied her face, seeing not just courage, but a strength of spirit he had never encountered before. For the first time in many years, he felt hope, a feeling he had long thought impossible in his dangerous world. Angel had not only saved his life, but had shown him that trust and compassion could exist even in the harshest places. The day wore on, and they prepared to move again. Angel knew the journey was far from over. The canyon still held dangers, hidden cliffs, wild animals, and men who sought the gunslinger's life. But she also knew they had survived the worst of it. Together they had faced the storm, the cliffs, and the threats of the desert, and they had endured. As they set out once more, Angel felt a quiet determination. The journey ahead would test them further, but she had learned that courage, skill, and heart could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. And as the gunslinger leaned on her for support, she realized that their journey was not just about survival. It was about trust, hope, and the quiet strength that could carry them through even the darkest moments. The desert morning was calm, almost peaceful after the storm that had tested them so harshly. The sun rose slowly over the jagged cliffs, casting a soft golden light across the canyon. Angel woke first, as always, scanning the horizon with sharp, watchful eyes. The gunslinger stirred beside her, his body stiff and aching from the long, difficult journey. But today he seemed a little stronger, his breathing a little steadier. Angel helped him sit up, offering water and a small piece of dried meat. "We are near the end of the canyon," she said softly. "But if we can make it through today, we will be safe from those who follow you." The gunslinger nodded, silent for a moment, then looked at her with an expression that mixed gratitude, respect, and something he could not quite name. The path ahead was still dangerous. Narrow ledges clung to steep cliffs, loose stones threatened every step, and the sun already beat down mercilessly. Angel guided him carefully, each movement deliberate and precise. She knew the canyon well enough to navigate it even under pressure, but the desert demanded constant vigilance. One misstep could be fatal. As they moved, the gunslinger began to speak quietly, his voice filled with awe. "I've never met anyone like you," he said. "I've always relied on my own strength, my own skill. But you have something I've never understood. Courage, patience, and trust. I don't even know what to call it." Angel smiled faintly, not taking credit for her actions. "It is simply what needs to be done," she said. "We all have choices. Some are easier than others. This one is difficult, but it is the right thing." The gunslinger looked at her, thinking about all the times he had been alone, fighting and surviving, never asking for help. He realized now that asking for help was not a weakness. It was a strength. The day wore on, and the desert grew hotter. The canyon walls reflected the sun's rays, making the rocks almost unbearable to touch. Angel stopped often, helping the gunslinger rest in shaded areas. She offered water sparingly, making sure it would last until they reached a safer place. Every step required careful planning, and every movement was measured. The bounty hunters could still be somewhere behind them, tracking their path, but Angel's knowledge of the land kept them hidden. By mid-afternoon, they reached a narrow pass that opened into a wider valley. Angel paused, scanning the area. It was safer here, with more cover and places to rest. The gunslinger, leaning heavily on her for support, looked around with relief. He realized that they were finally closer to escaping the canyon. Suddenly, movement caught Angel's eye. A rider appeared on the distant ridge, silhouetted against the sun. Angel froze, her heart racing. She could see that it was a single man, a scout perhaps, likely one of the bounty hunters. She gestured for the gunslinger to remain calm. "We must be careful," she whispered. "Follow me. Stay low." Angel led him through a series of rocks that provided cover, moving silently and quickly. They crept along a hidden path, avoiding the ridge where the rider could see them. The gunslinger's muscles ached, and he stumbled once, but Angel caught him immediately. "Steady," she whispered. "We are almost past him." After several tense minutes, they managed to slip past the rider without being seen. Angel let out a quiet breath, and the gunslinger looked at her with admiration. "You've saved my life more times than I can count," he said. I owe you everything." Angel shook her head. "You owe me nothing," she said. "Your life is enough. Live it well, and that is all the thanks I need." The valley widened as they continued, the canyon walls growing lower, the landscape opening into gentle hills. Angel's heart lifted slightly. They were almost free. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had tested them in every way: heat, terrain, exhaustion, storms, and men who sought to harm them. But through it all they had endured, and now the end of the journey was near. As they moved through the valley, the gunslinger began to speak more about his past. He shared stories of battles and narrow escapes, of mistakes that had cost him dearly, and of moments when luck had seemed to abandon him. Angel listened quietly, asking gentle questions when appropriate. She understood that part of helping him was allowing him to speak, to feel human again, and to recognize the value of trust and compassion. By late afternoon, they reached a small oasis hidden among the hills. A few trees offered shade, and a small spring provided fresh water. Angel helped the gunslinger sit by the water, washing the sweat and dust from his face and hands. He drank deeply, finally feeling some relief from the thirst that had plagued him for days. Angel smiled, feeling a sense of quiet triumph. They had survived the canyon, and now safety was within reach. As they rested, the gunslinger looked at Angel with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "I never imagined someone could face so much danger for another person," he said softly. "I thought the world was only about survival and self-interest. But you've shown me something different." Angel nodded. "The world can be harsh," she said, "but it can also be kind. Courage and compassion are choices we make, even when it is difficult. That is what I chose for you." The gunslinger looked down, humbled by her words. He realized that his life had been changed forever by her actions, not just because she had saved him, but because she had taught him something he had never known: that trust, hope, and human kindness could exist even in the harshest places. As evening approached, Angel helped him to his feet. They prepared to leave the oasis, knowing that they could not stay in one place for long. The desert was unpredictable, and safety was always temporary. But for the first time, the gunslinger felt a sense of peace. He trusted Angel completely, and he knew that as long as she was by his side, he could face whatever challenges remained. The journey back to the edge of the canyon was slow but steady. Angel led the way, navigating hidden paths and guiding the gunslinger with patience and care. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The canyon walls glowed in the fading light, and the desert, once harsh and threatening, seemed to embrace them with a quiet beauty. Finally, they reached the canyon's edge. The valley below opened into plains that stretched far into the distance. The danger had passed. The bounty hunters were nowhere in sight, and the desert, which had tested them so severely, now offered a sense of calm. Angel looked at the gunslinger, her face reflecting both relief and pride. "We made it," she said softly. "We are safe now." The gunslinger, still weak but smiling, nodded. I don't know how to repay you," he said.
You've given me my life back.
Angel shook her head.
No repayment is needed, she said.
"Live well and remember what you've learned. That is enough." As night fell, they set up a small camp near a grove of trees. The gunslinger rested, finally able to sleep without fear, while Angel kept watch, her eyes scanning the desert for any lingering danger. But all was quiet. The wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying a sense of peace and relief. In the days that followed, the gunslinger regained his strength. He and Angel traveled together, moving carefully through the plains until they reached a small settlement where he could safely rest and recover further. During this time, he learned more from Angel about the desert, about patience, and about courage. Their bond had grown strong, founded on trust, respect, and shared experience. When it was finally time for them to part ways, the gunslinger looked at Angel with deep respect. "I will never forget you," he said. "You saved me when no one else would. You taught me more than anyone ever has." Angel smiled, a gentle, quiet smile. "Remember what you've learned," she said. "Carry it with you. Be brave, be kind, and trust in what is right. That is all I ask." The gunslinger mounted his horse and rode away, disappearing into the distance. Angel watched him go, feeling a sense of fulfillment and peace. She had faced the dangers of the Devil's Cauldron, guided a wounded man to safety, and proven that courage and compassion could overcome even the harshest trials. Word of the journey spread slowly through the desert. Some called it legend, some called it truth, but everyone agreed on one thing: the story of Angel, the brave Apache woman who risked everything to save a life, would be remembered for years to come. Her courage became part of the desert's history, a tale told around fires and in quiet whispers, inspiring those who heard it to act with bravery and compassion, even in the most difficult times. Angel returned to her people, changed by the experience, aware of the risks she had taken but proud of the choice she had made. The desert remained harsh and unforgiving, but she had proven that even in such a place, acts of kindness and courage could shine brightly. The gunslinger carried the story with him, forever transformed. He had learned to trust, to hope, and to respect the quiet strength of those who act selflessly. And in the heart of the desert, the legend of Angel, the desert ghost, and the journey through the Devil's Cauldron lived on. A story of courage, trust, and the enduring power of compassion.